Welcome aboard B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Agent to your Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rav Yakov Zev Smith on Hamavir al Midothiv, Halachic Perspective. To have the great solicitor sponsoring a shir called Agent to your Torah, 718-851-8651, or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
Someone asked me recently, he was hurt by someone, and the person really hurt him very badly, and he knows he's going to come to ask him mechila on Erev Yom Kippur, and he's really not ready to be mochel him. Does he have to be? Is it wrong if he's not mochel the other person? And then he asked me, and if I just say the words, I'm mochel you, but I really don't, is that of any meaning? And I was thinking, this is something that really has to be spoken about. That's why we decided to talk about it, because we hear the shail all the time. Unfortunately, people have run-ins with other people, and the question is there a chiyuv to be mochel someone else when it still hurts? And don't forget, as the Mishnah says in Yuma Daf Pei Hey Amud Beis, Averish bin Adam l'chaveroi, Ein Yom Kippur b'chapa ad shiratzes chaveroi. So much of the kapara of the aggressor, the one that did the avla, is telling you being mochel. But then again, it's challenging. And I still remember vividly when I was my gerus Yankes, when I was a child. People said, I don't know where they got this from, that if you did something wrong, go over to him and say, are you mochel me? He said, no, mochel me, no. He said 3 times, you get my avera, and you walk away. I wish I remember my taste, like I remember how we said that with such conviction. Is that true? If you ask some mechila 3 times, he gets your avera? It doesn't sound at all legitimate. So the emes is, a number of years ago, we discussed the sugya in Shulchan Aruch Taf Reish Vav, she'efayis adam chaveroi, the chiyuv on the aggressor, the paigeya, the one that did the bad act, his chiyuv to go and ask mechila from the victim. Today we're going to focus on the halachas of the victim, the person that was hurt, and someone asked him mechila, does he have to be mochel? And many different shaylas that are negei l'maisa. And again, like everything else, there's a full sugya. There's not a musa shmuz. This is a sugya. It's a siman in Hilchas Erev Yom Kippur, Taf Reish Vav. At first glance, it seems to be a fairish mishnah based on a pasuk that yes, you the victim, you have to mochel the aggressor. The mishnah is in Bava Kama Daf Tzadik Beis, when someone was mazik someone else, so of course he has to pay all the damages. But besides that, even though he paid, he has to ask mechila from the victim, because again, you damaged someone, you caused them agbas nefesh, so you paid him. Okay, you took care of the mamanis, but what about the agbas nefesh? So there's a chiyuv on a mazik to ask mechila. But the nizik, the victim has to be mochel. Shenema, and the Gemara, the Mishnah quotes the story in Parshas Vayera, whereas you know, Avimelech did a terrible crime to Avram. He abducted his wife, and Avram was mochel him. But not just mochel him, Avram davened that Avimelech should be healed. Zok the Mishnah, umenayin she'im loy mochel shu achzari. How do you know that if he's not mochel, he's an achzar? And that's a very devastating accusation. Call someone an achzar. She'nema bayispal Avram elikim ayirba elikim es Avimelech. Avram not only was mochel Avimelech, but he davened on his behalf. But the Mishnah calls someone an achzar, the victim who suffered. If he's not mochel the aggressor, he's an achzar. In Choshe Mishpat, the Midothiv Chav Beis, the Mechaber quotes this Mishnah, but adds one word: the victim is not allowed to refuse to be mochel the aggressor. We'll soon see what that means. So we see in Shulchan Aruch, not only this halacha is real, but more so it's an issa on the victim to refuse to be mochel. And the Shulchan Aruch concludes, who wants more, who could expect more than that? But then the Ramah adds an important factor. And the Ramah really quotes a Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Tzadik Gimel, the next Amid. And the Ramah says, "Asa levakesh din al shemayim chaverei, she'asa leira, v'chol atzoyeg al chaverei hu nenesh tchila," which means if someone was hurt, and the Mishnah, the Gemara gives an example, Sarah with Hagar. Sarah was very hurt by Hagar, and she complained to Avram, look, get rid of this Hagar. And what happened? If someone is hurt and he cries out, punish the aggressor, who gets punished? And the one that did the victim. And it's a pella. It always bothered me, victim gets hurt, he cries out, punish the other person, and he gets punished. But it's really very simple. Imagine you have a very kind, compassionate father, and he has one son, a real troublemaker, and this son beats up his younger brother. And the younger brother says, Tati, I can't take it, please patch my big brother, he's always bothering me. And the father just finds it so hard to patch his son. Please, come on. And he pushes the father, platzes from Rachmanis, and patches the older son. But he's very angry at the younger son. Why'd you make me patch my own son? Can't you just be mochel and forget about it? You have to insist I punish him? It's so hard for a father to punish his son. That's what I mean. But be that as it may, it seems that the Ramah is trying to add, if you're not going to be mochel, you're going to keep it believe, it's going to koch, it's going to be mitztamik virala. You know what's going to happen? It's going to end up that you're going to say, just take care of it. I can't be soivel him. And then hunenesh tchila. So this is in Choshe Mishpah. By us in Tov Reish Vav, the Ramah adds hamochel lo aggressor milimchel, quoting Mari Vayel, that Lamaisa, you the victim, be kind and just be mochel. And then he adds, and this is basically the Lashon, you look up the Mari Vayel inside, the Mari Vayel says, hamochel lo aggressor shenema v'nosim l'cha rachamim v'richamcha kol meracham ala briyas meracham ala min hashamayim. That's probably the most important incentive to mochel someone else, because in the Rebbeinu Shalom's anhaga to us, as the Meshachar writes in Perek Yutes, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu oyev ela misha oyev es Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom's love to Eden is reciprocal, the way we love another Yid. V'chol ma she'ada magdal avosei liYisrael, gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu magdal alav. And the more Av Yisrael you have, the more the Rebbeinu Shalom has a hava to you. So Merivayel is saying the greatest sign of rachamim is when you mochel someone did wrong to you, because it hurts, and we're only human, and it's taka hurts. I have to mochel nachta too. But when a person does that, he's zoichet to a shefa, an incredible shefa of Avos Yisrael, and that, of course, is a tremendous incentive. We all need rachmei shemayim. We all need our needs. This is the secret key that opens all doors of rachmei shemayim. But then the Merivayel adds another incentive, which is really the Mishnah. The pasuk in Micha, Noisei Avain va'oiv al pesha. Zok the Mishnah, Lemi Noisei Avain. Who does the Rebbeinu Shalom forgive? Misha oiv al pesha. Oh, you're mochel someone else, even though he did wrong? Oh, you also did wrong. I mean, Ein Sadik Baris Hashiyas Toiv Lo Yechta. If you overlook Yenem's Chesroinis, Zok the Baruch, I will forgive your shortcomings. And that's really the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin, Chol Maval Midoisav, and he's mochel someone else, Maavirin al Kol Psha'av. And probably this would also make the person that's mochel doing the following the ways of Hashem. Valachti b'drachav. The Rebbeinu Shalom is a nice avan v'aval pesha. You do that as well. But it seems as even more, and makes it much more timely, especially now where we're holding. The Maril, who brought the Rebbe Merivayel in the Minhagim Amid Shin Chav Dalid, he says, Hayevukish limchel, the victim, lo ya'achza mi limchel, but he has another reason. Ki eich yo'iz es panav mi limchel. How could you say, I'm not being mochel? Because he did wrong, din is din, and let him suffer. Well, that's the way you're talking? Okay. What a chutzpah. Halayu oimid umevakish kol hayoin me'es adoin ha'koil limchel loy, avanoisam. You're asking the be mochel my averis. You have averis. And you don't want to be mochel yenim? Because din is din, and fair is fair? Kolshkein, let's listen. Kolshkein, the Kolshkein, uben benoi the Kolshkein, to yimchel chaverai, kasha, bikashu, and anoish, rima v'selas. If you're going to take the stand that I'm not being mochel because he did wrong, let him suffer, you are going to lose much more than he is. Because at least people at Hashem Ge'erki, we have our chatoim as well. And you want to say din is din, I'm not being mochel, the person will take the same attitude. Yom Kippur, we stand the whole day, slach lanu, chapel lanu, and if we don't take that approach to someone else, what is our hope for mechila on this day? So the Maril, very correctly so, links it, the mechila on Yom Kippur, to our being mochel someone else. And then he adds, V'yeda adam imu achze milimchol, gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu einay mocheloi, and he quotes this drasha of the Gemara, Noisa avain v'oiva al pesha. Our success every day, but especially in this day of Yom Kippur, is if we are kind to other people, the Baruch Shalom will reciprocate. Interesting, Mr. Bura in Sivkot and Ches was zoicha to mechaven to this mamish, but he adds, he says, even if the other person did b'mezid u'v'mered, he rebelled against you, but like that we also do things b'mezid u'v'mered, and that's our success in these days if we're mochel. I hope it's clear. The being mochel someone is a lot more than just a kindness. It's a chiyuv shulchan aruch in two places, based on a mishnah, based on a pasuk. Plus, I must mention the Eliyarab and Sivkot Nav, the Mate Ephraim and Sivkot and Dalid quote mekubalim mi she'eini ma'aver al midothiav ein tefillah nishmas on Yom Kippur. Whatever that means, but it's frightening. So Lamaisa Avada, the victim, did a big avla, but we have to be bigger than that. And I want to tell you, there's an interesting Chuvas Harosh in Klal Tezva of Sifhei, that a father told his son, whose son obviously suffered on the hands of we'll call him the aggressor, and the father says, I don't want you to be mochel, I'm going to keep it up, I don't want you to be mochel what he did to you. Zokti Rosh and the Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Kibbutz, Reish Mem, Sif Tezayin quotes it, the son does not have to listen to his father. I keep it over aim, but this is considered lavar al divrei Torah. Because you're mechuyev min Torah to mochel someone. The father said, don't be mochel. It's like saying, don't wear tefillin. As I state in Shulchan Aruch, quoting the Rosh. And I must mention a second tshuva, the Bach in the Chadash Simon Menvav. Listen to this story, a bizarre story. Someone swore, holding a Sefer Torah, that he will never be mochel his friend, or ex-friend. What he did, loy b'olam hazeh, loy b'olam haba. So they asked the Bach, now he feels terrible. What did I do? I swore b'nikitas chayfetz. What's my kapar? What's my tshuva for doing such a horrible shvur? So the Bach says, you don't need a kapara. It wasn't chal. You swore not to be mochel someone, lavar al divrei Torah. Like swear not to wear tefillin. So obviously, halacha, in many different ramifications, we see it's come out, we could say it's a chiyuv. But don't forget, as we always say, a chiyuv also brings a chiyus. If the Rebbe should mechayev us to do something, then he was mechayev us to do, we could do it. But anyhow, now that we have a better picture of this very important mitzvah on us as the victims of being accepting Yanam's tshuva, let us apply this lemaisa. So first of all, the question which comes up often, I don't want to be mochel, and I might say I'm mochel, but I'm really not. Does that work or not? So it comes to mind, and people say this is new, it's the old cloud, dvarim shebalev einam dvarim. You said you're mochel, you said it officially, so that's it. What you think in your heart, that doesn't count. However, I did see, in Rav Nissan Karel to say for Chutshani Amud Kuf, he quotes what he heard from the Chazinish, that he said that the side of mechila is to be mochel belev. And he rejected those that say that if you say the words you're mochel, even though you didn't mean it, it works. Chazanish says it's not true. Because dvarim shebalev einam dvarim means when it's a din and dibur. So you made a dibur, so you can't retract what's doing in your heart. But that mechila, the whole mitzvah is belev. So it's basically an ineffective mechila. Azoi, this is what the Chazanish said. It's not a maisa mechila. But interesting, the next piece in Chutshani, he says, if someone's asked by his friend, please be mochel me, and he really doesn't want to, but he's embarrassed. He says, okay, I'm mochel you. That's good. Because there, he made a decision. He made a conscious decision. He's embarrassed, but it's better to be mochel than be embarrassed. But at least he wants to be mochel. But if someone says, I'm doing it just to get him off my back, but I don't want it, if you don't want it, it doesn't work. Now that has two halachic implications. Of course, the person, the aggressor is in trouble, but so too the victim. That means you said you're not being mochel. That means that he's an aggressor. It's also what he's doing. Rabbi Yashiv in Ashrei Ish Amud Kuf Chav Ches mechila bepet sarach liyos biyachad in mechila. But if he just says it but he doesn't mean it, it's not a mechila. And then I remembered I once saw this, and I found it when I looked it up this week. In the Lev Elio, in the Hagdama, it's page 44, there's a story that someone once approached Rabbi Elio, and he said, I want to ask you, mechila, what I did against you. So Rabbi Elio said, what you do against me, I have to know. He said, I don't want to tell you, because if you don't tell me, I can't be mochel, you have to know. And he told him, and Rabbi Elio says, that's a very serious offense. I need 2 weeks to work on myself, come back in 2 weeks. And the person came back 2 weeks later, he goes, okay, yes, I'm mochel you, b'leiv shalom. So Rav Olba, in Alei Shur, Chelik Bey's Amid Reish Mem, he quotes the story, and he learns from this an unbelievable lesson. Mechila has to be sincere. And if Rabbi Elio felt, with all his great anivus, and all his great imidus emes, that he can't be mochel, just press the button, and he said, mechila has to be legitimate. Very similar to what we said from the Chazon Ish. But then he adds, and this is important, Rabbi Elio was the quintessential Ish Emes. Okay, you do when he davened for the Yom, but if there were words when he especially said the words about, take my tears, he was about Tefillah, by the way, take my tears and put them away. If he didn't have tears, he didn't say that. Because he was lying. Everything he said had to be Emes. But more than that, he once said about himself, Mi oilam lehikbid al mashehu. He never had a kpeda. So why this fellow, he gave him a run for his money? Maybe the shot is pashut, because the mice, he wanted to make sure it's 110% sincere. But Lamaisa, we do see that when someone is mochel, he has to mean it. Now, what I think is pashut, and this is Dvarim Pshutim. Let's say I was hurt very much, and he asked for mechila, and I decide I'm going to be mochel, ma'avel midothiv, and I want to follow the midas of Kadosh Baruch Hu, and I say I'm mochel you b'leiv shalom. But it still hurts, because I'm a human being. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't take away from the mechila, because a human being, a mensch nor a mensch. As long as you said it b'leiv shalom, and you meant it, so that's good. If it still hurts, because it still hurts. Maybe it's an Eitzah Toiva to do like Avraham Avinu did. You know what Avraham Avinu did? He was mochel Avimelech, and he davened on his behalf. Because when you have a sinner, you want to get rid of it, the best way to do it, the most therapeutic way of doing it, do something good for the person you don't like. Because that's the mitzvah. Adam nifel kefi polaisav, you do an act of kindness, you uproot the sinner and you replace it with ahava. But no doubt about it, when someone is mochel, even though it hurts, that's part of mechila. That's a legitimate mechila. That's hama'avir al midaisav. His mid is saying don't, and he's saying yes. Next question. Avada, we see, and that's clear, a person has to be mochel. Are there any exceptions to that rule? So the emes is that in Dinei Mominus, it seems clear a person that owes money to someone else, so we'll call him the victim in this case, one that was running after his money, doesn't have to be mochel. Now, of course, there's a midah in his gava called a mavater. The Gemara says, Iyai vachim b'memoinei hoya. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah Daf Yud Ches, Abchinida Matradian, his ticket El Haba was because he had money that was mixed up, his own money and tzedakah money, and he's mavater. Being mavater in Mominus is a great zechus. But Zoktim Achukar Chaim, the Chavas Yor and Ausim and Taf Reish Vav, that Lamaisa, you could be mochel, you should be mochel on everything. But Davar Shebe Mamoin, and the other person could pay you eventually, you don't have to be mochel. That we say in the Taka, we say in the Tefillah Zaka, I'm mochel everybody except for things that have a taina Mominus. The Ramban, interesting, in Parsh Kedoshim, Yotes Yud Zayin, on the Issa of Nekima, Ramban says Issa Nekima is when you don't want to lend someone something, even because he didn't lend it to you. But Dr. Ramban, but someone owes you money, take him to Bezdin. So definitely there's one exception when it comes to Dinei Mamonis, you're not mechuyev to be mochel. Again, I don't take away, it's a great zechus. If someone owes you money and he can't pay, you could even write it off as ma'isa money. It's a big chesed. But when someone owes you Dinei Mamonis, that blibes a din, and that you don't have to be mochel. Well, a very common question, unfortunately, is when a person says, I'm mochel him, but this goes on all the time. He does wrong, I'm mochel him. I guess he feels it's not so bad after all. So I'm really getting him accustomed to doing avos. So this l'chayra could fit into the Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Yuma Pehei, Ha'oim echda v'ashiv, ein maspeaking beyond the lasis tshuva. A person feels like, it's making chet easy, in one easy lesson, just do aveira and ask for mechila. Now I know that's talking about echda v'ashiv to the Bari Olam, but it makes sense if by you being mochel him, he's going to get used to this idea. It's like, a routine. I do an aveira, I ask for mechila, you say you're fine, and let's start again. But the emes is that Lamaisa, you have to realize that the whole process of being mefayis and asking mechila, the Chazon Ish and others say it's the busha, it's the achna that really makes the piyus work, because a person realizes when I did something I have to go over to him and ask him mechila, it's very embarrassing, it's very degrading, and that's the best deterrent, because you paid a price for last aveira, so this you won't do it. In other words, the piyus process has to be a deterrent, has to be help on the future. But if you're going to say that echta v'ashiv, he's asking mechila to be able to do the aveira again, he's getting used to it, so you're defeating the purpose. Don't forget, the Tefillah Zakah we also say, Amoicha mechila gemur anybody except the echta v'ashiv. So Lamaisa, it seems this concept in Svar is Pashit, but it could be a Beferish Gemara. Listen to this, a very important Gemara for our Sugya. The Gemara says that Rav was offended his Rebbe, Rab Chanina, and he went 13 times to ask him mechila. Frag the Gemara, you're not supposed to ask mechila more than 3 times. We'll soon get back to that. So the Gemara says, Rav Shani. Rav says, Rav was such a tzaddik, he did it more than 3 times. We'll get back to that soon. But Gemara is a different kasha. Rab Chanina, you said no to Rav 13 times? It says you're not supposed to be an aggressor, so why you tell Rav 13 times no? So, and for the Gemara, that Rab Chanina had a cheshbin, and his cheshbin was, and Rashi explains, because Rab Chanina had a dream that Rav is going to become a Rosh Yeshiva in his city, and Reb Chanina is going to have to move to the side, because ein malchus noiged chaverta I feel like my lima. In other words, Reb Chanina is going to have to die to make room for Rav, and Reb Chanina didn't want to die, so he kept on saying I'm not being mochel, and Rav will feel so bad about it he'll move to a different city, open a yeshiva in a different city, he'll be the Rosh Yeshiva in the other yeshiva, and Reb Chanina could live the extra years. So since he's not being mochel l'toivosoi for his own benefit, or maybe I should say it's a form of chayecha koidmin, pikuach nefesh, that's why he wasn't mochel Rav for the 13 times. This is all Gemara and Rashi and Yuma Daf Peizayin Amud Beis. So we see clearly that although you're supposed to be mochel, but l'toivoscha of you the victim, you don't have to be mochel when that comes up l'maisa. Now what's surprising is the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah in our Simtaf Reish of Siv Aleph, he says a mochel a aggressor im loish mechavel l'toivas hamavakish mechila. Ramah says you should be mochel, but let's say you're not being mochel to the benefit of the aggressor, then you're okay. Now all the Achrayim ask, where did Ramah get this from? If you say you don't have to be mochel when it's a toivascha for your benefit, that's a Gemara, the story of Rav Chanina. But where did you get that from, the toivas of the mavakesh? So the emes says, I saw a golden Yisoid, the Taratamima, on our pasuk in Vayera. He says, the greatest raya to this is the famous story in Tainis Daf Chaf Amud Beis. Remember the story when Rabbi Elazar Shimon, the Haley Rabbi Elazar Shimon, one day was in a little of an elated mood, and he saw a person, goes, how ugly is this person? And the person was humiliated beyond words, and he refused to be mochel Rabbi Shimon. So the whole story, the end, he was mochel. Zok Taisvis, this person was not stam a person, he was Eliyahu Hanavi, and we'd Lashon Taisvis, and he came to teach, he came to inspire him that because the Maisa Shaloi Yargil Bedava. Be careful before you talk. He came to this world, Eliyahu Hanavi, disguised as a person, to teach Rabbi Elazar Shimon a lesson. Don't talk without thinking, because you're going to have to pay the price. So there we see refusing to be mochel the toiva of the poigeia of the aggressor. But anyhow, we have a problem on the Ramah. The Ramah extended it to the toiva of the aggressor. So the most simple pshat is that the avla is, when you're not mochel, that's achzorius. But when you have a reason, so what's the difference if the toiva of the aggressor or of the victim? And Takat Bichadash says the ikke is achzorius. Once there's a cheshbin, it doesn't make a difference. His toiva, your toiva. If it's a legitimate toiva, it's okay. In fact, some say that it's a kal v'choyma. Madach, that for your own benefit, you don't have, they don't have to be mochel. Kolsh can be thinking of his benefit. But the Maisa, the El Yerabah, and all the Mefarshim explain that the Ramah Taka expanded the Gemara. The Gemara is talking about the toiva of the oneself, the victim. But who had in the toiva of the aggressor? So you could even say kolshkein, if you don't like kolshkein, but who had in? Fine. So we definitely see that when there's a toiva of the aggressor or the victim, you don't have to be mochel. Now here's a plea. Zok the Mishnah you've cut and test, even though you don't have to be mochel, but get it out of your heart. In other words, you play hard to get. You say, I'm not mochel you. You're playing games with me. I don't want you to do it again. I'm not mochel you. But in your heart, be mochel. Or they'll say, I'm not mochel you. But in your heart, be mochel. What's the point? Because a person that has sin in his heart, you notice that the chinuch and Reish Lamaches teaches the word sinner. He says, sinner geremes rois gedolos b'mei yadam hu amida apchusa v'anemeses tachlis hamiyos be'eni kol bal seichel. So you're going to keep sin in your heart. You're going to let the sinner to destroy the leif tahar, the bilvavi mishkan evna. Forget it. Don't play the game. Make believe you're not mochel, but deep down your heart, be mochel. So that's something that we see, that to say no is just be bachutz. But deep down, try to put it behind you and move on. There's another exception when a person doesn't have to be mochel, and that's based on our Gemara. If you remember, the Gemara said, they asked mechila more than 3 times. Why did Rav ask 13 times? Zok Gemara, Rav Shani. So Rashi learns, machem hoyel atzmai. Rav wasn't more machem. He did it more than 3 times, but really the chiyuv is 3 times. Zok the Pichadash is very dochuk to say that. Why do we learn Pasha? Rav Shani means if you hurt your Rebbe's feelings, then you have to ask and ask and ask more than 3 times. Because Rav Chanina was Rav's Rebbe. And Be'emes, this is a Gemara that many people quote, maybe misquote, when they're angry, I'm not being mochel, because the Gemara says in Yuma, I'll be mochel. Oh, wie steht das in Gemara? Kol ta'am chacham, she'en noikim v'noite kנחש, ein ta'am chacham. I don't want to lose my credentials. So I once told someone, I said, I'll tell him, let me get 8 Toiv Kamashal. I'm not a poison, but I'll take 8 Toiv Kamashal. You're going to come up Vienna Welt and say, Tuesday, Parshas, whatever, you were so angry, you were out of control. What was that all about? He says, you know why? Because he hurt me, and I will kaim the Gemara called Tam Chacham like the Kanachash. The entire Bezdin Shamayla will break out in laughter. You're a Tam Chacham? Then you're in trouble. But let me tell you, let's say they'll say, Bezdin, Tuesday, you were humiliated and you didn't say anything. What about the Gemara in Yom Chav Gimel that you have to be like Tam Chacham? Kanachash. So you say, I didn't know that I'm a Talmud Chacham. You're in good hands. You're safe. So you're better off just saying, I'm not qualified, and be mochel. But basically, there is such a patur. The Chachma Shloima on the page from McClug and Simon Tafra Israel has a beautiful discussion. One of his problems with this halacha is, why was Avram mochel Avimelech? Avram was definitely a Talmud Chacham. So again, it's a suffix if you have to dafka be mochel. So misafik, play the safe approach and just be mochel him and don't worry. A good question is, I'm ready to be mochel the aggressor, but he didn't come to ask mechila. He's not even holding, he doesn't even care. If he doesn't care, why should I care? Now that's a very legitimate taina, because again, it's gate and mishdan, so I have to mochel him. But the ma'isa, we do know that this has virtue. Many people follow, which is based on a Gemara, every night before they go to sleep. Hariני mochel chol mi shehiches v'hitnoisi. That's the Gemara Megillah Chav Ches. Many people say it in the Tefillah Zaka. In fact, the Chavetz Chaim said that in Tefillah Zaka, it's all the way at the end. I'm mochel everybody unconditionally. Say it first and then start with the Zaka, because you're never going to end up saying till the end of it. But Lamaisa, it seems to be a great chesed. Because don't forget, what I told you the Mishnah earlier, so if Lamaisa, if you're not getting mochel, he's in trouble. Now, Baruch Hashem, I could say, Baruch Hashem, that both the Pri Chodesh and the Birkei Yosef both say, the Mishnah doesn't mean that if you have an outstanding choy by someone else, there's no mechila in Yom Kippur. Because that would be devastating. If we have we have an account with someone, we have no mechila at all. In fact, but they both say the similar pshat, that in every Aveira, Benad Mechavein is also Benad Mamakam. I was nasty, I said a nasty comment to someone. So I heard him, Benad Mechavein. There's also Alav of Loisainu. I know is Alav Deraisa. If you don't get the mechila from him on the Min Adam Lechaveiroi, then even if you clap the Achetz, Ton of Anecha, Lashon, and Diba, and you said everything under the sun, it doesn't work. The mechila ben Adam Mamakam on and Noaz Devarim is dependent on getting a mechila from the person. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but it's bad enough. So Lamaisa, the question is, he's going to be in trouble. But then again, is it really a mechila? He doesn't care. He has no achna, he has no busha. It is no deterrent. And Taka, I saw the Chutshani Ahmed Kuf quotes the Chazinish that the ikka of the pius, when an aggressor has to ask mechila, is the achna. So we're missing something. But here we come to an extremely important Gemara for our sugya. The Gemara is in Yuma Daf Pezayim that a butcher very badly insulted Rav. And Rav waited, kept the cheshbon. It was almost Yom Kippur, and Rav realized that he's not coming to me to ask mechila. Rav went to the butcher shop and was walking around making his presence felt. Hopefully the aggressor will ask for mechila. The butcher looked up, chap right away, and said these words, Zil Leslie Milsa Badach, leave, I have nothing to do with you, I'm not asking mechila. As he was chopping the meat that he was working on, one bone shot out and hit him in the head and killed him on the spot. And that's, of course, because he humiliated Rav. But the question is, Rav, why do you have to make the trip there? Stay home and say, mochel b'leiv shalom, the butcher. In fact, the Gemara has another story about Rav Zer did the same thing, that someone embarrassed him and he went to him to prompt the mechila. Why do you have to go to him? Stay home and say, Hareini mochel, mavatul, everything, gafadar. So this Gemara seems to be clear that you being mochel is not enough. There has to be some type of movement mitzad the aggressor. There has to be the achno, the busha, something. Because the ikke is that feeling. And that's to explain why Rav Zeir and Rav could not just stay home. But we see something else, and this is an unbelievable yesod. Lamaisa, the old question is that what this butcher did, he didn't ask mechila, right? But what was the aveira? He did a terrible thing to Rav. Okay. He wasn't chayav misa, right? Rav came and he still wasn't chayav misa. When he said the word zil les limida badach, all of a sudden he's chayav misa. What's the pshat? So you have to realize the following. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Yudches, also in Yavamas, Daf Mem Tes, Dirshu Hashem b'matzei karu b'yoisei karov. Eilu asaras yom shebein Rosh Hashanah liyam HaKippurim. Ilmoli kosav yef shel, but there are days that the Baruch Shem is close, and the Gemara says to every single yachid, it's days of karov and rochik. Zokt Rabbi Yitzchak of Petersburg in Koich Vayarts in the old print at Simon Hay. He says two unbelievable yisoides halacha l'maisa we have to know. First of all, why did Rav and Rab Zera go to the butcher? If he doesn't care, why do I care? So he says it's because they were being mizdabek b'midos HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Baruch Shem knows we need a mechila in Yom Kippur, and sometimes we're not ready for that. So the Baruch Shem leaves Oin Kachay, comes down the Shiva Rakiyas from Oin Kachay to this world to make him available to us that we could ask him mechila. So he says Rab Zera and Rav learned this approach from the Rebbeinu Shlam's Midas. That if he doesn't come to you, you, victim, go to him. I'll say, when I'll be Rav, I'll do that. But don't say that. The El Yerabban Sivkot and Alav, Mat Ephraim Sivkot and Gimel, the Kitzur Chanor Kuf Laman Alav Dalid, learn from this Gemara that just like Rav went to the butcher, If you know someone hurt you and he's not coming to you, you take the initiative and secure that mechila. Go to him, try to work it out. I know it's not easy, but that's what the Gemara says. But there's another incredible gem that we get from this Gemara. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva Perek Gimel, he says, Tzadikim nechtamim al l'chayim r'shayim fakert beinanim toilen oisi ad Yom Kippurim im asa tshuva nechtam l'chayim v'im lav chas v'shalom fakert. So the obvious question is, if someone's a beinani 50-50, all he needs is one mitzvah, and that's the Gemara in Kedushin Daf Mem. A person look at himself in life like he's a beinani. Asa mitzvah achas ashrav shechriya atzma l'kav zechus. So why did the Rambam demand that a beinani has to do tshuva? Let the Rambam say a beinani should do one more mitzvah. Zok te koich vayar, beautiful yesod. Why? What taka happened? This butcher did a terrible thing. He didn't die. He wasn't chayiv misa. Rav came to him, still didn't die. Puk zil less mili badach. Then he was chayiv misa. What happened? Teres is pashut. What do you mean? Bazayin is one thing, but if Rav comes to you and you say those words, Leslie Milsa Badach, that's the biggest av of them all. So he says an unbelievable thing. During the rest of the year, when someone's a beinani, then a mitzvah is enough. It tilts the scale. But in these 10 days, Yom Kippur, the Baruch was with us. He came to us like Rav and the butcher. It's not enough just to do a mitzvah. The Baruch came to help you do tshuva. If you don't do tshuva, it's like saying Zil, Leslie, Milsa Badach, Chas V'Sham 1,000 times. And he concludes, Ma'noir harayin ezel l'maymikba. It has such practicality, such emes to it. These are days that it's easy to do tshuva. That's what the Chayodim writes. It's easier to do tshuva, to change. If you don't shtel tzu, we're in trouble. But Lamaisa, we do also see that the ik of the mechila has to be the fact that a person goes out of his way to be machni himself to get that mechila. Now, Lamaisa, I should mention, there is another part of the Gemara that we have to understand. The Gemara says in Yuma, Amavakesh, Al Yevakesh, Mimena Yoysa Mishalesh Pamim. And the Shulchan Aruch Taf Reish Vav Aleph says, interesting lashon, you try 3 times, and each time you go back, and you don't go and, when I was a child, 3 times, like in a Shema Achas, like Haman's children. You ask him mechila, take a few people with you. Try again, try a different time, come with, some say different people, Ben Yoin says different people. Make a procedure. 3 times you come with 3 groups of people to show you achna. If he doesn't comply, einay zakuk loy. Very interesting lashon. I looked, no one, I don't know whether Ramah got that lashon. I mean, this is taka, this says in the Gemara and Rishonim, but this lashon is very strong, like, just forget it. You're okay. What does it mean? So the Pri Chadash says a beautiful yesod. It doesn't say in Mishnah ad she yisratze chaverei, which means you have to work until he's mochel. Ad she yirtzes chaverei, you have to ask mechila. If he doesn't want, that's his problem, but that's not your problem. It seems in the Pri Chadash, once you ask mechila, so you're off the hook. But Lamaisa, what does it mean? So if you look in the Mordechai, one of the Rishonim, Tafshin Chav Gimel, the Biur Gra and Sifkat Gimel mentions it. He quoted Tanchuma in Vayer Lamed that Lamaisa, a person has to ask mechila and has to take it very seriously. He has to bring people and ask, and if not, he has to line up people and say, I tried. But he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu roya shehishpelas atzmai u'merachim alav. Now, the Welt says the Pshat that the Baruch, if they see that you really mean mechila, habol tayim messiah, and the Baruch will put in the heart of the victim to be mochel you. But it seems that that's correct. Once you did all you can, l'chayra, at least that's the way the Pri Chadash learns, you're off the hook. However, although it's a beautiful diik, it's hard to accept. You didn't get a mechila. So why all of a sudden are you nimchal? And the emes is the Maril Taka use the lashon HaKadosh Baruch Hu roish uhishpal atzmei lefanav umerachem umochel v'serleach loy. You know what it could be the pshat is? Like we said earlier, that be'emes in every benad mechaverit is also benad ma'makim. L'noas devarim, for example. So if you tried as hard as you can, the Baruch is mochel you, but your friend wasn't mochel. You have an outstanding debt, and maybe we'll even say, and I talked to saw both the Chutshani and Amud Kafalaf and Kayvus Halach is Amud Shin Hey, and I think it's very mistavra. The mechila of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is genuine because you did what you could. He has a taina, that's only his problem. I mean, it's your problem also, but doesn't take away the min adam la'mokay mechila. I saw Rabbi Yashiv is quoted by his son-in-law, the Yitzchak Zilberstein. He has it in the Chashuk Chemed on Yom on our Gemara. That Rabbi Yashiv said emphatically, it can't be that if it wasn't mochel you, that you have a mechila. There's no such thing. Ein zok does not mean that. What it means is kipshuti ein zok, you have nothing more to do because you're an einis. Einis rachmana patre, which is not so good as we would like it to be. Rabbeinu Bachai, and the famous Rabbeinu Bachai in Parshas Vayechi, Perik Nun Pasuk Yud Zayin, he points out that the Shvatim asked Yosef a mechila, and he said so many nice flowery things, but he never once said, I'm mochel you. He said, because the Maisi wasn't mochel them. And that's why, that chet, they were the Ser Hugei Malchus. And if you recall, in the Tisha B'Av Kinnis, we speak about that. And we still suffer from that lack of mechila. But Lamaisa, again, it's hard to believe that Ein Zok means you have a mechila of it al mechaverei. And that's why Lamaisa, the best eitzah is stay out of trouble. Getting into trouble is easy. Getting out of trouble is usually more difficult. Lamaisa, if the person doesn't want to be mochel you, then you're in trouble. But Lamaisa is another point I want to mention. It's really a big part of a different share. The whole procedure of doing, you have to take people and go back to him. So basically, it reminds me of the Rabbi Yashiv. This story is printed, I saw at least 2 svarms, Ashriyesh, Chelik, Gimel, Amad, Kuf, Chavav. They were boys in the yeshiva, and they had a victim. They had a bach in there, but he wasn't well, and he was talking, not so secure, and he was the underdog, and they took out all the frustrations on him. They gave him a run for his money, and it affected him. He had a nervous breakdown, and he ended up in an institution, and they realized what they did, and they have to ask him mechila, but he no conditioning mochel. So he went to Rabbi Yashiv, and they asked him, what could they do? Because he said, you can't ask him mechila. In this situation, his mechila is valueless. He wasn't even responding properly. You have to wait until he dies, and then you go to his keva, because the neshama versteht, but not this goof. So now they were horrified, and let's say we die first. So they asked, what do we do till then? Rabbi Yashiv says, why don't you think about that before you did what you did? That's always the answer. You wake up now. Rabbi Yashiv once was quoted, somebody asked him, what's the eitzah? Because Vezok's done eitzah v'als think. What do you think? I'm dialing eitzah? You hurt someone's feelings, Penina Zaktamar and Baba Basta Zayin L'Shem Shemayim Niskavna. Look at the price she paid, because you play with Bel Mechaver, it's jumping into the fire, like Chaim Shalevitz would say. So that's why, what's the eitzah? Think about it before you do what's wrong. But if Lamaisa, the person is not mochel, he decides he's being adamant, then you have an unpaid bill. Another interesting exception is we're allowed to not be mochel. There are more quotes it b'shem Rishayim, the Mordechai, the Smag, Hagoyis Maimoni, is a Tzah Shemra. Why? So all the Rishayim and Achayim, also the Chum Zadeshan explains it in great detail, as does Levush and Sif Kat and Aleph, because you are mighty Shemra, and you know how Lashon Hara spreads, especially in this Narisha world of social media. Things go viral, and in a few months later, the whole world knows. There's no way you could get back, retract all the damage that's done. You know how far they went, and how it caused the damage to the mishpacha reputation. So the way the Paiskim explain, the damage is irrevocable. It's irreparable damage. You can't get a mechila for that. So that's why it's important to mention, in this world that things move so quickly and rapidly, we have to be careful. I saw the Shulchan says, but if he's careful and he goes to every single person and makes and he uproots the bad thing that he said, maybe it will work, but it's not practical. It doesn't work. It's not feasible. You can't collect all the different fragments of Lashon Hara that spread because of your words. So again, the best eitzah is preventive medicine. Another interesting case you're talking about when Lamaisa Mechila doesn't seem to work, and that's regarding a katan. The chinuch in Mitzvah Shuna Meches, we speak about the Isvay Noas Devarim, he says a katan, you have to be very especially careful, because Lamaisa, there's an issa of being Mitzayir a katan. Now why especially more careful? Because we know in Choshen Mishpat a katan doesn't have a din Mechila, doesn't have the das to be mochel. And many Paiskim say that if you hurt a katan's feelings, the mechila doesn't work as a katan, because he doesn't have the capabilities of being mochel. There's a famous story, the disciple once appeared to a mitzvah uninvited, they didn't even know why he was there, And he came, went over to the bar mitzvah boy, sat down, and spoke to him a few words, and the mitzvah boy smiled and walked out. So the parents said, what was that all about? Because he remembers his disciple once thought that the child was playing with the siddur, and he yelled at him, like, why are you playing with the siddur? And he realized that he wasn't playing with the siddur, and he kept a note who the boy was, kept the cheshbon, and he went to his bar mitzvah and asked him a mechila. Now that's a godless story, but the truth is it's not so far from halacha l'maisa. If you hold a cotton is not a ben mechila, what could be a different eitzah? Now l'maisa, some say a shtickle of alumdus and a spalt, that in choshim mishpat you need a chalois mechila, so it's not his mamanis. But if you heard him, so kaboy lekach polta, maybe some cotton there, but it doesn't really seem correct. L'maisa, with a cotton, like a gadol, but in a certain sense a cotton, and the chinuch says even one's own children and grandchildren and talmidim. So with a cotton, there has to be a special chashivos. Don't forget, you're going to write down, tell the boy after you heard him, don't forget, invite me to your bar mitzvah. He'll forget, you'll forget. So basically, play it safely. L'maisa, we see something that was a little bit surprising, maybe a little alarming. First of all, you have to be mochel, even if it hurts. If not, it could be an issa. But even in cases when l'maisa, you don't have to be mochel. Let's say a toivoschol, a toivosai, and even a moitzi shemra, the Magen Avram says, when someone's moitzi shemra on you, be mochel believe. It seems that mechila is very, very much part of our avodah. And the question is, Mayasa ben v'lo yechtem. It hurt me. I should be mochel him, believe, and not believe. It just seems to be unreasonable. And let me tell you, it's not the wrong word that I'm choosing. The Mesilas Yesharim, the Heilige Mesilas Yesharim, I would say the Surgeon General of Klal Yisrael, he writes in Perikut Aleph that Lamaisa, a person that should forget what someone did to him, he needs to be chazak v'amitz v'ukal rakam malachi asharis. For a malach could be mochel. Loi el sheichne botei choymer asher ba'afa yisoidam. It's not easy to forgive someone. He said, not take nekama, you have to be a malach. In fact, the Mesilas Yesharim there learns, when someone did something and you're angry, lo yisikaim. Okay. So I'll tie my hands behind my back. No, it's not enough. Lo yisitar. Don't harbor resentment. Say, okay, so I won't. I'll just wipe him off the map. No. But you have to love him. Not stam love him. Lo yacha. Kamoicha. This last Mesilas Yesharim. Belishum hefresh. Kamoicha beli chalukim, beli tachbulos, mazimas, kamoicha mamish. Every mitzvah boy has a chiyuv, loisika, loisita, v'hafta, loyacha, kamoicha beli shum hefresh. How can a person be expected to do such a thing? I mean, let's talk practical. I mention. So the answer, Rabbi Yisai, is the one word that's the answer to all of our problems. That's called emunah. But let me explain. I once, probably about over 40 years ago, I once asked Rabbi Yankov Kamenetsky this shaila. I wasn't learning the sugya, but I went to visit him on sukkahs, chalamoid sukkahs. So I asked him, I said, yeah, mostly mochel someone, but what do you do if it hurts? He said, I'll tell you a story, but haviyuvda. This story he told me, I'm telling you all the details. He said, I was in the Lita, and I had a big family, and I had no panosim. I applied for a certain rabbanos in a certain city, and I was qualified, and I almost got the job. The last minute, someone that wanted his car up to get the job, that was his words. He said a lashon hara, and I lost the job. And I was very dejected. First of all, I lost panasa, an opportunity for ruchnias, and he said I was better than the other Rav, more qualified. And I was so broken, I did what I was told not to do. I had no choice. I moved to America. First he was in Seattle, in Toronto. He had to leave Europe, and his brother-in-law, who he revered, says, you can't, you're going to destroy your family. But he had no choice. He came, pashit, he didn't have lechem lecha. And you have no idea, he said the Tsar had to move to America. And this is, I wouldn't say long before the war, but quite a few years before the Second World War broke out. No one did it at the time. And then he told me, he said like this, he says, mein ganze sich, my whole being, mein einiklach. And when I got to 50 or einiklach, I stopped counting. That was his law. He was then at the time over 90. He had over 50 einiklach. Is als adank yenem's lashon hara. Because the other fellow got the job, and was one of the 6 million Kedoshim that perished during the Second World War. And I came to America well in advance of the war, and I survived my whole family. Now, this is one chesed that makes mechila easier, the way the pasuk says, the starim darchei Hashem. What looks like the biggest churban sometimes turns around and becomes the hatzalah. It's a bechina, what the Gemara says in Nidaf Lamed Aleph, Oid Hashem ki anaftabi. One day a person is screaming and crying, Baruch Shalom, why'd you leave me? And the next moment, Oid Hashem. And a famous story, someone was supposed to make a boat to go on a business trip, and he missed the boat literally because he had something stuck in his foot. And he was speaking mechar from a God, Baruch Shalom, what happened? I missed the boat, I missed Panasa. And he heard that the boat sank and no survivors. Oid Hashem ki anafta. So one approach is we have a very limited vision. We don't know what's good and bad. Someone did something, a person lost a job, but he gets a better job. But this has a very limited application, I admit, because when it has a happy ending, it's easy to go along with the happy ending. But what does a person do when there's no happy ending? When there's agbas nefesh and bizyonis and redifus, and there's no foreseeable positive results? So the answer again is that one word, the Heilige Reine Yiddish Emunah. I'll tell you a different story, that there's no happy ending. The Pasuk in Shmuel Beis, Perek Tezai, in Pasuk Hey, describes one of David HaMelech's darkest periods of his life. He's running away from his son that wants to kill him. He's near to his own son. And to make matters worse, Yetze Yotzai Umekalal. Out comes this Shimei and Geira, and he's cursing him. Vayisakal Bavanav as David. Imagine, he stones, he gets skilled to Melech, David Melech Yisrael. V'choy Amma Tzei Tzei Ish Hadamim, and either Pshat is Reitzeach or Yechayev Misa. Imagine, call the Melech Yisrael Reitzeach or Chayev Misa. Ish Bli Al, as we know, was by the Erev Dachas. Heishav Alecha, K'bar Shem should pay you, called Mei Bei Shol, and goes on, and Mami goes on, he's cursing David. And Avishai ben Surya says, Lo mikal hakelav hameis hazeh Adoni HaMelech Ebenova Asiras Roshai. Avishai is going to behead this Moed B'malchus in the most gruesome way. How did David respond? In the darkest period, he's being chased by his son. He gets stoned and humiliated, and David felt very keenly the pain. Because at the Seif Yamav, you know what he said? V'hu kilani klol and retzes. It wasn't a joke. Avisha, what's your problem? Koyikal Hashem. Hashem amalei kalel as David. Umi yoim madu asisakain. And again he repeated. He says, my son David, my son Avshalom is out to kill me. What's the pshat? David realized the oimek, the practicality of living a gishgacha pratis. It's not just saying Emir Hashem, but more importantly say Kach Rotza Hashem. Because nothing happens in this world if it's not part of the master plan. Zok the Chinuch in Mitzareish Memalach, when he tries to explain how could you tell a human being who's not a malach, Loisikon, Aisa Tudvei Shaitmin, Mishoshi and Mitzvah Sheyeda Adam V'Yitan Aliboy, Kichol Ashi Yikreyu Mitoy Vadro. Everything that happens to a person, whether it happened in an accident or someone with malicious intent hurt me, Hu Siba Shatava Elav Meis Hashem Baruch Hu. Umiyad Adam, Umiyad Ish Achiv, Layiyah Dava, Bilti, Ratzon Hashem. Nothing happens to me if that's not the Ratzon Hashem. He is the Garzan Biad HaChoitzev. He's the pawn, he's the Shliach, he's the Ma'aseh Ba'alma, whatever you want to say. But if it happened, I deserve that. Now, of course, part of a different shmooze is the person that, the perpetrator, the aggressor, is going to get punished for every bit of his avla. Because he chose his Bechira to be the Shliach. It's like Parai being punished for oppressing Klal Yisrael, like the Shayim explained. But Klape me, it's not him. And then the Chinuch adds, when someone's Mitzayah you, Yeda ben Afshei Kavainoisav Gormu, Vashem is Baruch Gozolav Kain, Hashem Amalek Kalel, Vila Yoshiz Machshavtoi Linkoim Imenu, Ki Hu Einoi Sibas Ra'asoi, Ki Ha'avain Hu HaMesavev. We have to have the emunah to see he's a pawn b'yad Hashem. Hu Einoi Sibas Ra'asoi. Even in the worst moments, David was zoicha to have the clarity. It's not just saying Amir Hashem, it's Kach Rotza Hashem. This story didn't have a happy ending. David was humiliated beyond belief. Klol and Retzes. But he had the Heilige Reine Yiddish emunah to say he's not the problem. The problem is within me. I have to look and be mefash b'may sight. This is the eitzah when someone feels he can't be mochel. Who ain't a sibas ra'asa? Imagine two bachrim driving down Ocean Parkway early morning after a late chasana, and the driver is speeding. So his friend says, you're going to get a ticket. I'm telling you, they're flashing those tickets. You're going to get them? Nah, I don't believe it. Right. Comes home and he starts getting nervous. But he's waiting a week, and 2 weeks have gone by. No tickets. I knew the whole thing is a hoax. Yeah. The next day, the mailman comes with a stack of mail, and on top he sees, strictly confidential, personal, and you know what that means. They're worried about your covered. And he realizes he got a ticket, and he's so frustrated. All these weeks he's holding it in. He's so angry, he starts beating up the mailman. Sugar, why are you beating up the mailman? He doesn't know what that is even. Who ain't a sibas or ase, right? That's the chinas clarity. When someone hurts you, Hashem, it's not his fault. He's just delivering their Baruch Shalom's message. You live with that, it's a different world. Now, I once said, I think this is emes. The brothers asked Yosef a mechila. And he said, what for? You might hate us, you're going to take revenge, and we're worried. So what did Yosef respond? Al tiru hasachas elokim ani? Am I the Rebbeinu Shleilim? And all the Rishonim ask, what's that? They're worried about their lives, and you're talking Yamunah. What does it mean? So maybe on a simple leifin, Yosef understood, you didn't do anything to me. Who ain't a sibas or asay? You're a pawn. Why you get punished for your avla? That's adam lamokoim, because you chose your bechira to be the shliach. That's not my business. Me and you, there's no ben on the chavera here, because it's all ain't a sibas or asay. You worried about your avera? Oh, that's only ben adam lamokoim. Hasachas olikim anoichi. I'm not the ben shloim. You have to ask bechira, but kape me, you're only a shliach. You're only a pawn. But the point is that there is a tremendous clarity in Emunah. You don't see another person, you see Bari Yola. But maybe I could say one more incentive. A person moved to America, he had a tremendous family, a big family, and had no job, and he needed pasha what to eat. And he had no job, but get a job, he merely had to feed a family. So he went to a grocer that he knew, and said, you know what, I'm really at a difficult stage in my life now, I need a chesed, let me shop in your store, and I'll pay back when soon I get a job, don't worry. So the fellow says, sure, that's what friends are for. It went on for weeks and months and years, and he had no job. He had an astronomical debt to pay, and he was embarrassed to see his friend. Pasha, embarrassed. One day he met, right near the store, he met his friend, the grocer, and he mamish turned the other way and started walking quickly. And the grocer says, come over, I want to ask you a question. So he mamish turned around and started crying. He says, you're going to ask when I'm paying? I just can't afford it. I don't have a job. Please have pity. He says, I didn't ask you for money. Come into my store, he says. And says, come to my store, says, come to my office, and says, you want to hear a story? Yesterday someone came to me and asked me, saying your name, so-and-so, does he shop in your store? I said, yes. Does he have a bill? He said, oh yeah. How much? It's none of your business. Why do you have to know? He goes, I'll tell you why. Because he did something very good to me, and I want to repay him. I want to pay his bill no matter what it is. So I told him, you don't want to pay his bill because you know how much it is. It's a few $100,000. I don't care. I'm paying his bill. And he took out a check and he paid me. And then the grocer turns to his friends and says, come over, let me show you something. Look, he puts on the computer and he presses a few buttons. That's your name, your address, that's you, right? And then hits the button, balance, 0. What type of feeling, what euphoria would this person had when he saw that a chayiv that was mamish it couldn't be repaid? Someone paid for him. Balance 0. This is a Gemara. The story I made up, rather. But the story is a Gemara. Hamavel midoisav, Mavirin al kol pshav. It doesn't say if you're a chafetz chaim that has kam on avera, Mavirin al kol pshav. Kol hamavel midoisav Gemara shana yudzayah, Mavirin al kol pshav. Why this works? Because the Baruch Shalom knows the world cannot exist if we're not mochel one another. Because people do things wrong, and l'maisa nobody's perfect. If we're not going to be mochel one another, it's not going to work. And the Baruch Shalom promises everything. Our mechila, ma'aval midoisa, mavirin kol pshav, noisav oiva pesha. It's pashit, the wisest investment that we could do. And we're coming to these days that we need those words salachti. So much of it is totally on our ability to say salachti. Tuma may concern if we don't see eye to eye with someone. Now is the time to pick up a phone and make that advance. The Baruch will help in the zechus that we show superhuman kayches in being mochel someone else. The Baruch will give us the mechila, be zechus, v'achsim, achsim b'toiva, v'chol Yisrael, amen v'amen.
Shem irgendwie you tell like your biggest character of Smith, and Kamachsi Matayva for the whole Olam. There's some after Kaddish will be a seeker of the Shir. Chanayim and Akashim, Ratzagish Mochel, zechus, as Yisrael, the Fikr, Hibben, and Tayr Mitzvah, Shanema, Shochovitz, Matzita, Yadu, Tayr Kaddish made up. Malchus, Baby Yasim, Sonne, Karam, Mashita. Hey, can we make them high all days, Israel, by Shalom, and Karam, Ali Savara Bono Tamdi, they some day on commandos, and I say, Russell and Little Savara long, alone, the place of Rabati, and with Rafa High, and every come, I wouldn't wish my way out of Malmay. Yes, I'm not trying to then I'll call you some Malmay. Let's have some rain, Malya, some Lane, I'll call you some Malmay. Okay, I hope everyone's about to stay a few more minutes for the Sikkim.
Okay, we learned today, first of all, and first and foremost, the important part of Yom Kippur is the mechila. Not only for the victim, for the aggressor, is it important to ask mechila, but for the victim to be mochel. That really, we are privileged to get a mechila because the Baruch Shalom is naisa av ma'oiv al pesha. To be mochel, to ask mechila, this is something that has to be done a whole year, but especially in these days. There's an isser based on the Lashon Shulchan Aruch to not be mochel, isser to refuse a mechila. It's also dangerous. We lose our mechila and we lose our koyach hatfila, as the Mekabalim say. But basically, the point seems to be that unless there's an extenuating circumstance, we'll soon see. But as the Paiskim say, that we saw them the Rosh and the Bach, it's laval divrei Torah to say you're not going to be mochel. It has to be a real mechila, just to say it but you don't mean it. It's not a good mechila. Say it and you mean it, but you can't feel that the pain went away. That's fine. That's maval midos, that's overcoming one's tendency. But you don't have to be mochel on momenis or an echta v'ashiv. If there's a toivascha to save yourself, because you know he'll take advantage of you, you don't have to be mochel. To help him, to help the aggressor realize the severity, you don't be mochel him. Because for his taiva, it's also, as we said, a valid reason not to be mochel. We've mentioned more in Tainis, Avchav, Reb Shimon. Talmud Chacham can be makbid if he's certain that he has those credentials of a Talmud Chacham. Make sure that Lamaisa, as we said, you should be say Hariני mochel and Tefillah Zakam, but the aggressor should know that the real pious is when a person goes over and he has that hachna and that busha. That's part of the kapara. We saw a beautiful shot in the Gemara in Yuma where Rav went to the butcher to make it easy like the Baruch Shalom does for us, but we should never Chalila say zil, lesley, milsa b'hadoch. Also we saw that's the mitzvah of Kadosh Baruch Hu to make yourself available to the aggressor. Once he asked 3 times, so officially ein ezokagla, but that does not mean there's a full mechila. It means there's a mechila mirad lamakim, but still try. Mr. Burr said you still have to try more and more. The best thing is, like Rav Yashiv said, don't get into trouble in the first place. Some things there are no eitzah. Moitzi Shemra is a terrible chet that the attack is no tshuva. There's no possible tshuva. And Mevaish a katan, you have to wait till my mitzvah, so stay away from anybody, but especially a katan. And the practical way is nistarim darchei Hashem. Sometimes it's a bechin of oitchak and have to be. Sometimes it's Hashem amolei kalel. But the ikki is the balance 0 offer. And Pashut, it's the best investment if we make that special move, we mochel the other person.